Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon, and I'm here once again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. I am happy to be here, eager to talk with you and see you. Unfortunately, we had a little snafu. Anyone that's paying close attention to the screen and is a regular on the show might notice, what the heck? We are having another um, reading episode right after we just had a reading episode, when I have been for some time now alternating. We get a little play, we get a little reading time. I would love to bring you an episode right now where in Classic, we did Chaliceer last time, and we're setting up to have her run. Well, she's in Ashenvale now, but we're setting up. We would be doing our Undead Warlock next, our Forsaken, and he's in the Hillsbrad Foothills. So we would have been doing a nice full hour plus long chunk with him, and that's still on the docket. Unfortunately, all World of Warcraft servers are down. They've been down for a while. I've been trying to be patient, but it's been about 45 minutes or so. So I don't want to miss my window and not make a video. And there's so much content for us to look at that we'll just go ahead and throw another one in the cycle. So if there's been a kind of odd, even rotation that's been creating some soothing space in the OCD corners of your mind, I'm going to shake that up a little bit and really throw that into the works. Fortunately for myself, normally that's exactly describes me. But I just haven't really been paying attention to which ones are odds or evens on this. So we're going to continue to read the final book in the Dungeons and Dragons series. I did do a little bit of research and homework, and I have our next two books kind of queued up, and I'm ready to look at them. So while it will be the closing of a chapter when we finish the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which we read Cenarian Circle last time, and we're going to read Cult of the Damned today. It will also be a it'll be an interesting, maybe at times eyebrow-raising, quick jaunt. We take a little intermission with a couple tomes to look at before we move on to the next kind of project of this weird semi-canon, non-canon stuff. The current iteration has been about 20 or so large books all about the Dungeons and Dragons World of Warcraft experience, and I do have a project probably about that long on the reading side that's coming up soon as well. All right, so stay a while and listen. I'm going to go full Diablo since I've been playing that so much, and the season just started, and I'm having fun with that. We're going to do a little mini on the Cult of the Damned. We've talked about them extensively, which is why I think this is just a mini one. But let's dive right in. It has a membership of 10,000. That's by far the largest we've seen so far. And they have to be including just mindless members of the Scourge. That's the only way that you could call 10,000 your membership there. There's no way there's 10,000 living humans that haven't already been killed. They're, of course, I don't know that they're lawful evil. I guess they are strictly adhere to the system set out by the Lich King. The Cult of the Damned is based in the Plague Lands of Lordaeron and centered in foul Scholomance. I didn't realize that the Cult of the Damned's headquarters was Scholomance. Interesting to know. And we have yet to really fight almost any of them because that's just such an end game level. We're just now working in Hillsbrad Foothills and Ashenvale, Stone Talon, wrapping up Red Ridge. So we'll be kind of spreading out a little bit into that Dark Shore, Wetlands, those kind of regions. So we are still pretty early game, early mid. Their activities are spreading plague and training new necromancers. Wise men tell us to know thy enemy. The Scourge is the enemy of all that lives, and their mortal, living, but still stinky arm is the Cult of the Damned. Fanatical in their devotion to the Scourge, these spies, soldiers, and necromancers hope to achieve a life of undeath that will last for eternity. The history of the Cult of the Damned. It began, of course, with the Lich King Ner'zhul, whom the Burning Legion had charged to scour humanity from the world. He called folk with darkness in their hearts, compelling them to do his bidding. One of the most powerful was Kel'Thuzad, an archmage of Dalaran, who was the first to bend his knee before his desiccated majesty. Kel'Thuzad's first mission was to found a religion in Lordaeron that would worship the Lich King as a god. Taking advantage of the discontent of those whose lives had been shattered by war, disguising himself with illusions and using magical compulsions when argument lost its persuasive charm, Kel'Thuzad mocked the holy light and introduced a new path, offering eternal existence in exchange for blind obedience. When one has buried a half dozen of one's children, or fled from 3 burning homesteads in 2 years, even madness can be comforting. The cult of the damned made its nest in the heart of Lordaeron. Eagerly the acolytes convinced and kidnapped others, even former friends and brothers, bringing them to be converted, whether through discussion, magic, or torture. They became zealous lovers of the undead, gross little necrophiliacs, in a completely non-sexual way. Well, probably. To further the Lich King's goals, the cultists carried the plague cauldrons that brought the scourge into Lordaeron, causing a plague that killed most of its citizens and raised them as fodder for the scourge. When the Burning Legion lost to the combined forces of the Alliance and the Horde at the Battle of Mount Hyjal, the Lich King was pleased. He was free from the Legion's control, and, aided by Arthas, who had now become a Death Knight of great power, Ner'zhul could consolidate his victory in Lordaeron and extend his influence to the rest of Azeroth. Within the Plague Lands, the cult continues to scheme and worship. It now has 2 aims: spreading the undead plague and training new necromancers. Okay, what are their relationships? The Cult of the Damned is a loathsome organization, and all people with any sense hold are afraid of damned cultists or are furious with them. How could the Alliance not despise it? How could the Horde not fear it? How can the Forsaken not see that the outstretched claw that reaches for their throats? The Cult and the Forsaken are especially deadly enemies. It seems now that the cultists passed the point of sanity at the moment they joined. At first, this may not have been the case. When the cult originally formed, it promised eternal life after death, just as the Church of the Holy Light did. The cult's promises were the same, save that people could see the results. People could indeed attain a form of life after death. The initial cultists did not know the Scourge's true plan and joined in relative ignorance. Now, of course, the Scourge cannot hide its plan. Those who join know what they're getting into. They're either crazy or monstrous or both. Some might see the Burning Legion as the cult's natural ally, but the Scourge, and therefore the cult, shattered relations with the Burning Legion in the Third War. The hatred between these 2 factions mirrors the hatred between Ner'zhul and Kil'jaeden. Although the factions have never been in direct conflict, the Legion and the Scourge are like fire and ice, bitter enemies who spare no quarter in any conflict. Okay, how is this organization set up? The Cult of the Damned holds the Lich King in highest esteem, but for all practical purposes outside Northrend, the Lord of the Scourge, and thus the Damned, is Kel'Thuzad. The bulk of the cult is composed of acolytes, mortal necromancers, warriors, and priests, whose former faith in the Holy Light has been perverted into an utter belief in the omnipotence of the Lich King and the transcendence of undeath. Sometimes Scourge leaders raise cult members who die in the battles of the Scourge, and acolytes in particular are eager to enter the sacrificial pits and become shades, as in Warcraft 3. The cult members do not wear uniforms, for their tasks often require them to infiltrate mortal enclaves to spy or recruit new members. However, while cultists cannot always identify each other by dress, they all bear a mark. The mark is secret, and obviously the cultists keep it hidden, but it allows them to recognize their brethren. It's like 3 dots on the shoulder. Red John. Perhaps the most dangerous cultists are those who dwell among their mortal brethren. Many folks, including this dwarf, believe that the cult has agents in all major cities and in smaller settlements. These agents draw others into their twisted religion, follow the Scourge's orders, and work against the living. And where are their locations? As we've already said, Scholomance in the Eastern Plaguelands is the cult's center. New cultists come here to train, and cultists receive orders and missions here. Of course, many members of the cult live outside Scholomance. As I mentioned above, they infiltrate many aspects of our lives. Suspect your neighbor. What about the members? Well, current members of the cult know full well the extent of the Scourge's evil, and they join anyway. That should tell you something about them. The major and only source for internal dissent is when the cultists see fallen enemies rise as undead creatures, while the cultists themselves must work to receive divine payment. Sometimes they're told their service will merit them far higher rewards, true undeath, as opposed to the shambling undeath of the skeleton and zombie legions. Other times they're threatened with immediate death with no possible reward. Either way, doubts are quickly satisfied. After all, without the legions of lesser undead, the Scourge would not have attained the power that it now holds. And the leaders are, of course, Kel'Thuzad, a male human lich, as the leader of the Scourge in the Eastern Kingdoms, and as the one responsible for the cult's existence. Kel'Thuzad is the de facto leader of the Cult of the Damned, though he usually has a more important things to think about. So they don't really get into him because in the Monster Guide Villains section, he has pages, and we already read that and discussed him. What about heroes, if they wanted to be part of the Cult of the Damned? It's difficult to imagine the Cult of the Damned being associated with anything remotely considered heroic. The cult's goal involves plague, genocide, and rebirth as life-hating abominations. Even the most flawed hero would keep a safe distance from the cult, for they are death and a madness beyond death. See, this is weird. Why would they be considered lawful evil, I guess, other than that they adhere to their structure? Most of a hero's encounters with the cult are likely to be riddled with suspicion, zealotry, and violence. However, one scenario is that the heroes are indeed members of the cult but realize the error of their ways and secretly work against it. A small band of reformed heroes might unite within the cult's midst and plot to bring down the Scourge. Yeah, that's the only thing I could really see is some kind of... otherwise, you're just doing combat scenarios where you're mercilessly killing whoever. Adventure hooks. The heroes discover that a member of the cult is attempting to place a plague within the walls of an enemy encampment. This would doom thousands of non-combatants to die an excruciatingly painful death and probably provide the Scourge with more undead for their armies. On the other hand, they are the heroes' enemies. What do the heroes do? What if they warn the city but it refuses to listen? Or, a number of Forsaken apothecaries attempt to create a plague to wipe out the Scourge. Okay, that's happening. That's canon. They labor in secret, but a cultist spy learns of their schemes. He takes this knowledge back to his leaders, who send damned cultists to eliminate the threat. Okay, so that's a small one. Mostly, I would say, because, well, one, they're very one-dimensional as an organization. Two, we've already read a lot about them, including their leadership in the past. So, not a lot to really flesh out, but just touching on them one last time. They're also not, as opposed to the other three that we've read so far, they're not really a faction. You're not gaining rep with the Cult of the Damned, other than some Northrend quests where you sort of infiltrate them, and there might be some classic quest lines like that too. There's not a lot of extensive work that you would do even working with them. All right, well, in lieu of an online classic episode, we have another reading episode in the pipe, 5x5. Thank you everyone so much for watching and for listening. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will enjoy seeing you again next time on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft.